So far in this class, we've focused just on game-based learning. But starting in this week of the course, we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about gamification. And it's really easy to confuse these two terms, game-based learning and gamification. As we've seen in the first 3 weeks of the course, game-based learning utilizes games to help students learn. And these can be digital games, or they can be handheld games, they can be card games, whatever it might be. But utilizing games as a basis for helping the students learn. That's game-based learning. But let's look now at gamification, what it is and how you could begin using it. And I want to start by just asking the question, what makes an addicting game so fun? We all know people that have become seemingly addicted to computer games. And it can become sometimes a negative aspect in their life. They're playing the game maybe too much. Well, a lot of research has been done on this, and lots of gamers have been surveyed and tested. And these are the things that they report as being compelling, that help compel them to play computer games, sometimes so much so that they seem to be addicted and possibly playing those games too much. Some of the things that they report is that successful games, compelling games, are easy at the beginning and then gradually get harder. Another thing that's reported by gamers is feedback. Successful, compelling games provide feedback to the player, and their achievements are recognized early and often in the game. Another element of successful games is goals. If there's no goal to the game, it's often harder to have a compelling game. Gamers say that it's important to have choices in their games so that it's not just a one pathway game. There are some successful games that are that way, where there's really only one path to take, but some of the more compelling, successful computer games are ones that feature choices for the game player. Next, we have competition, challenge, opposition. This is not always crucial, but a lot of gamers report that having competition, having challenge, and opposition in the game helps make it more compelling and fun. The gamers that were surveyed didn't necessarily use this terminology, but basically they say that the game has to meet the game player in the zone of proximal development. In other words, the game can't be too incredibly hard to use, but it also can't be way too easy. It needs to encourage the game player to stretch and be at the edge of their development, at the edge of what they're capable of doing. So that goes to difficulty level. If it's way too difficult, they'll give up. If it's too easy, there's no challenge there and it's not appealing to the player. Next, they say that compelling, fun games reduce the consequences of failure. In other words, after 20 hours of playing a game, if you make a mistake, you don't have to start over at the very beginning. That's just one example. There's other ways that successful games reduce the consequences of failure. But probably the most reported aspect of successful, compelling games, according to gamers, is this idea of leveling up. Most successful games give you the ability to level up your character and to gain new abilities or new skills and to access higher levels and things like that. So this idea of leveling up is important. So now, what I would ask you is, do these elements of successful games, do they relate at all to the classroom, to education? And I would say, yes, each of these is a natural for education. And so some of those same things that can make computer games or other digital games more compelling and more successful, those same things might be useful in the classroom as well. If we can apply some of these elements of successful games, if we can apply those things to our classroom and make our classes more like compelling games. I'm not saying that we always play games. I'm just saying maybe we need to work on making sure that as we introduce new concepts, it's easy at the beginning for the students. We provide lots of feedback. We make sure that they understand that there are goals, the core curriculum, etc. Give the students choices. Introduce competition, challenge, and opposition. I wouldn't say we should always do that, but if there is some element of those things, it may help make the classroom more compelling, the content more compelling at times. we need to work on helping our students in that zone of proximal development. Not too hard, but not too easy, and always pushing them to stretch for something more difficult, something higher. There are ways I think that we can reduce the consequences of failure, and that might include allowing students to retake tests, allowing students to redo assignments and things like that. That's just one example. But there are ways that we can reduce the consequences of failure so that they can try again or try something that's outside their comfort zone, because they know if they fail, it's not going to be devastating. They still will have a chance to overcome that. And then what about leveling up? I believe that leveling up really that's the essential nature of education. That's what it should be about anyway, helping our students to level up themselves. Not some fantasy character, but to level up their own skills, their own knowledge, their own capabilities. Gamers love that idea of leveling up, but those same game players can feel that same feeling if they're leveling up themselves in education. So let's talk about a definition of gamification, and that would be: gamification is the application of game design elements and game principles in non-game contexts. So again, gamification isn't really always about playing games. Sometimes it might be, but it's more about learning those principles of game design and applying them in something that's not a game, like a classroom. And here are some examples. These are examples from the world of business and health, not necessarily education. But there's a couple of apps that I find to be kind of interesting. One is called Carrot Fit, and one is called Carrot To Do Apps. And some of these have been updated, and maybe the names have changed. But basically, the idea with these two apps is it gamifies fitness. This one does, Carrot Fit. It tries to make losing weight or becoming more fit and more healthy, it tries to make that into a game. And basically, you have a trainer.
Greetings, Chuck.
And this trainer is kind of cruel, but the trainer walks you through some goals, and you set some goals, and then as you achieve those goals, there are some game-based elements. You get feedback, you earn rewards, and things like that. So that's one example from the world of apps and also health. Now they also have Carrot To Do. It's a to-do list, and same kind of thing. It gamifies to-do lists. Another example that I've used quite a bit is Runkeeper. This is an app, again, and it's related to health. Basically, I can use Runkeeper to track my runs, my bike rides, my hikes, things like that. Let me just play a little bit of this. And so this gamifies running. And as someone that doesn't really enjoy running, this app makes it a lot better for me and a lot more fun. There's even leaderboards where you can track with your friends who has walked the most in a particular week, who has run the most, ridden their bikes, hiked, whatever it might be. And they have these leaderboards that are kind of fun. Also, there are rewards that come from doing this. This used to connect to Kmart, and you used to be able to get money to use at Kmart. That doesn't really work anymore, I don't think, but they still do, I believe, have a connection with Walgreens, and you can get some money to use at Walgreens by earning points. So kind of a fun example of gamifying running. Another quick example, you can see I'm interested in a lot of health apps. This is called Zombies Run, and it's an app, and there are different stories that you can download in this app, but basically it turns your runs into a horror story and a horror experience. Let me just play this for you as well.
Can you see what's happening? No one is getting cured. There is no cure.
So if you like zombie stories and things like that, it's kind of a fun way to keep yourself running. You don't want to get eaten by the zombies, and you're part of the story, basically. It's kind of fun. A very popular other example of gamification is Pokemon Go. And this was a phenomenon a year or so back, maybe a couple years ago, but it's still available. And Pokemon Go takes exploring the world, exploring your neighborhood, and turns it into a gamification type of experience. So another example of gamifying exercise, gamifying exploration, and getting outside and into your neighborhood. Now, some of you might be thinking that may be just a game. Maybe it's not gamification, maybe it's just a game. And there is a fine line between some of these things. Some of these very well may be games, but one way to look at them is that they're gamification of improving your health or exercise or things like that. Now, there are other examples in the corporate world. One of the more famous ones, I think, is My Coke Rewards, or just Coke Rewards now, where when you drink soda, you can get codes underneath the caps or in the boxes, and you go to a website, you put in those codes, and you get points that you can use for all sorts of things. So again, that's a way to gamify, in that case, drinking soda pop. So something maybe not so healthy, but it makes it a little bit more fun than it naturally would be. So that's another example. So now let's consider some examples of gamification in education. For generations, teachers have used some low-tech examples, and we'll look at some of those in just a minute. You can also have something called class badges, where the students earn badges for doing their good work or for cooperating or helping other students. And then you can also gamify classroom management by using tools like Class Dojo and Class Craft. Now, you can actually use these also for more than gamification of classroom management. You can use it to gamify your curriculum as well. And you'll learn about that more in this week of the course. So here are some examples of ways that you could use low-tech gamification. You could have a badge bulletin board like this one, where the students can earn badges, and these are just paper-based badges. They can go and take the badge once they've earned it, or the teacher can give those to them once the students earn them. And some teachers have the students keep a 3-ring binder, and they give them baseball card holders. And then as they earn these paper badges, the students put those badges into the baseball card holders. There are some teachers that also, instead of using grades, they use experience points. And the students earn those experience points, and then at the end of the quarter, that converts into a letter grade or things like that. So those are some low-tech examples of gamification. Some high-tech examples would include digital badges, and here are some websites that have gotten involved in digital badging. A couple of these are no longer currently in use, but still, they were good examples of badging or digital badges. And then we have, as I mentioned earlier, Class Dojo and Class Craft that can be used to gamify classroom management and even your own curriculum. So I hope that this week will get you thinking about what are some ways that I can take elements of successful games, of compelling games, and I can apply those to my class. And that would not necessarily mean that you're constantly playing games, but how can you make your class more like a compelling, successful game so that your students might become a little bit more possibly addicted to your classroom and compelled to keep learning and to keep attending your class so that they can experience those compelling elements. So something to think about, and I hope this discussion sets up well the last 3 weeks of this course. So I hope you enjoy learning about gamification.